Hello, my knowledge thirsty beauties, and welcome to another special episode of DP2daBrain. I am DP, and I am actually joined by two guests today, the collective known as the WobbleGoblins. We have SubMegatron and Laghima, sorry. Guys, how we doing today? How you doing?
Doing all right. How about you, man?
Very well, very well. So I want to jump right into it. I understand you guys had a show last night?
Yes, we did. Our first show together ever.
Okay, well, I don't know. Give me the rundown. What was the event? What was it like? I don't know. Give me the rundown.
It was an event called Via Satellite. It was at Junior's Bar and Grill here in Columbus. Great event thrown by a guy or a group called Exodia Media Group. Very professional group, awesome people. Threw a hell of an event, and we got to be the opening act for it, and it was a great time.
Yeah, and I'll just go a little bit deeper into how that set went. So it's DJing can kind of get almost like robotic because you practice your set so much to get it down. But playing with him, it was like I had to figure out what would go with his music and vice versa. And it makes it more fun for us and in the crowd, I think, because we're so we're so hype when we're actually doing it. So
yeah, and this was a question I was asking with Kraken, which so when you live mixing, on the spectrum of like getting totally into it versus what I say is the man behind the curtain in Wizard of Oz, where you're just mixing and people should just listen. Where are you guys on that spectrum?
So I used to be maybe a 4 or 5, but us together.
What do you mean by 4 or 5? I guess
I used to be where I would be so focused on the technical aspects of it that I wouldn't be bobbing my head and I wouldn't be into it.
Okay.
And I realized through really watching him DJing with him is that you really should be nodding your head the entire time. You should be dancing the whole time.
Helps you keep the beat.
Yeah, exactly. And
like
so
a metronome. Yeah,
it's definitely I'd say we're definitely like a 10 now.
Okay, good. And that's what you think is you prefer that as
as
viewers.
Yes, and there are. It also depends because there are DJs that are so they're really just producers and they have to DJ to get by, so they will do the whole man behind the curtain thing just because they don't really care about DJing. They literally just want to make music, and they know that they can't pay somebody to fake being them and DJ. They have to go out and do it themselves.
Well, I think if you're trying to force it, it'll just, if that's not necessary, if you're not being natural, then it's just going to end up messing you up. So you just got to ride whatever natural flow is yours. So there's no right, wrong. I was curious just how you guys were on that. Curious. And you mentioned DJing specifically. And Kraken mentioned that he started DJing before producing, and he felt like that was a really good segue, kind of like how a lot of athletes will play soccer to work on their footwork, if you will. And Laghima, you did mention to me in your bio that you did some DJing. So if you want to kind of break down that.
Yeah, so I started as a DJ. I got my first controller about 1.5 years ago. And just started learning how to mix songs together, started releasing mixes and mashups, and then eventually got booked for a festival and met him, and he told me he was more of a producer than he was a DJ. And I'm like, okay, well, I want to learn how to make my own music. So we got together, worked tirelessly for months and months, got some songs under our belt, and now I know how to produce music at least decently enough.
This kid's a prodigy. So
stop it.
Like the big thing for producing, I started producing a lot like before I started DJing, which I actually do think is a mistake, because when you're a DJ, like he already knows all the song structure. He knows how many, because electronic music is very rhythmic and it's very like specific and detailed. And so he has the background knowledge from being a DJ for so long where he knows where to put those in a song without having to listen to somebody else's song because he's done it so much. But I've been producing and DJing for almost 8 years now. But I never found that I could get the right, like I wasn't producing the kind of music I wanted to produce. I knew everything, I knew how to do everything, but I wasn't, like, there was something missing. Then when I met him,
if I may, you had the technical ability, but you were missing a little bit of the spirit, if you will.
Yes, that's it. Literally, I had all the technical ability, some of the creative ability, but there's been literally dozens of times where I'll have a sound and I'll be like, Micah, I need, and then he'll be doing it as I'm saying it, or the other way around. He'll be telling me to do something as I'm doing it. So that's also something that's really important. If you're going to do the team thing like us, I've tried it with several other people. It does not work unless you have the absolute same taste in music. That's the only way it'll work.
That leads into what I think is one of the more interesting things I wanted to ask about. And if I can clarify the question here for a second, I think most people have been noticing, especially since turn of the century, the shift from groups to solo artists. And not to go too far down a tangent, I think that's a lot based on an advertiser-centric society, but not to go down that route. But I think it's interesting, specifically because you guys are EDM guys. Now, I mentioned I'm more in the hip hop rap scene. And one thing I like a lot about hip hop rap, it is extremely easy for artists to do crossovers because you get the skeleton of the beat and the hook in there. And then for the most part, as long as the verses are in the same stratosphere, you can basically plug and play them.
Just real quick, I have 4 rap songs out right now and I produce rap beats and stuff. I love it. I'm a hip hop fanatic, so that's awesome. Yeah.
But
yeah, we're both I find real big in hip hop too.
Very easy to for rappers, especially to just get verses together and but when it comes to EDM, it's very much very much one whole. So then my interesting question is, you are both individuals and you inherently are going to have different creative visions.
Oh, this is good.
How do you turn 2 creative visions into one creative product that equally, or not, does it have to equally represent you both, or how do you compromise 2 visions to one?
Okay, so I have like a 3-part answer, and then I'm sure he's going to want to chime in.
Yeah.
So like I was just saying, the most important thing here is that you 2 have the same taste in music. And I don't mean almost the same. Like, there's nothing that he's played where I've been like, I don't like that. And unless he's lying to me, it feels like it's the same for him too. And so because we have that sort of vibe, when we make music together, we both go into it with, we want to make good music. We don't go into it with, he wants to make a good song. I don't go into it with, I want to do X to this project. We want a good song to come out. However, that's the case. Now, because of the way that our personalities are, the case is that I do a lot of the maneuvering and the technical stuff, but he does most of the creative heavy lifting. He finds like our samples. He'll do a lot of the sound design, which is making the sound exactly like tailoring it to our song. And he does a lot of like the final listening, because his ear is just trained really well. And that's probably from DJing as well,
So if I may interject just real quick. Sure. So you both have kind of complementary skills, and then, if you will, you define the project, and then you kind of divide and conquer based on your very similar to how software engineering companies,
it's very, I mean, we are engineers, we are audio engineers, and what really works for us is like we have the same taste in music but differing personalities, where I'm very like uppity and like I call myself like I'm the fuel and he's the engine. Like like if that makes sense, like he is the one that is kind of coming up with all the ideas and making sure that it goes, but like I'm back there actually hitting the gas and propelling the thing into motion.
He's got the energy.
Yeah, the energy. Yeah, that's
very much. No, that makes a lot of sense.
And I also wanted to say how we get into disagreements, because that was
what I was going to ask about. What happens when you openly disagree?
Yeah, and anybody that wants to do any group project, listen to this, because this is important. You have to have one person that makes the final decision on something. Like you can't have it to where
someone's
like,
got to be Beyonce.
Like if you're gonna have a disagreement and it's about sound design, Micah's always going to take the cake because he has a better ear than me, and I know that. If it's an argument about, like, let's say BPM, or which these are rare things, but if it's an argument about more of the not creative side, but more of the technical side, then I'll have the final say. But that's never had to happen before, because the worst that's ever happened is Micah said something that I was like, man, I just spent like an hour doing this. What the hell? But I didn't say that. I kind of walked away, came back, and 10 minutes later, I was like, thank God you did that. So you have to be able to trust the person. It's trust. That's what it is. It's trust. He's not trying to take advantage of me, and I'm not trying to take advantage of him. That's what it is.
I'll see him sit there and start doing something that I had just worked on, start messing with something, and I'll be like, dude, the hell are you doing? Come on, man. And then I'll be like, okay, whatever. I'll just watch what he's going to do. And then usually 9 out of 10 times what he does ends up sounding better. So
very much. Yeah. He sounds like, once again, I'm probably going to end up referring to the Kraken conversation a lot, but he says he'll spend about 2 hours just playing around with sounds and then be like, oh, I haven't actually done anything productive. But I argued, yes, you have. You might not have put something, in the file, if you will, but every second you spend listening to sound, you're subconsciously training your mind just that much more.
Right. So have you ever heard of a concept called the 10,000 hour rule? Or I
haven't heard of it. I have a base idea of what it might be.
So this guy wanted to study what makes people like expert level in any given field. And he found that across almost all of them, the person that is at that level has practiced for at least 10,000 hours. That works out to like almost 10 years at 20 or 30 hours a week, which is like the average that a person's investing in. So it can't just be practice. Like you just said, it has to be purposeful practice. Like if he was doing that, but recording every song he made, his songs would be garbage. He needs to do that experimenting and that playing around and that stuff to figure out what he likes and what he doesn't like. So it's everything. We're just really fortunate because we love this. I mean, really, you would not be able to do this unless you just, it's my favorite thing ever. I wake up and I go to sleep thinking about
I want to dig it a little deeper into passion in a little bit, but that's
sure.
Just off the top of my head, just thinking, what if in terms of like a tiebreaker, maybe it might be beneficial to have like an impartial third party to break ties, if you will. Have you considered that?
Eventually, but it's such a rare occurrence. I mean,
we actually have,
and that person would have to be on that same vibe length as you guys. You wouldn't want someone outside the vibe length making a decision,
right? And we are extremely fortunate in that we like and also like I respect his solo work a lot, and he feels the same way about he dropped one of my songs last night that I wasn't even him planning on dropping. He's just like, I gotta drop this. It's made me feel really good,
I do. We love each other's music too, so
it's really, there's not really one specific thing, but it's more a bunch of small things that add up, if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. Yeah. A little bit of a different question for each of you here. If you had to pick one go-to sound or one go-to instrument, be it hi-hat, bass, snare, whatever, if you both had to pick your go-to, your bread and butter sound, what would it be?
So I really like
That's his sound.
What would you call that exactly?
Sounds.
What is just wobbles,
wobble basses.
Wobbles. I mean, we're the WobbleGoblins, so wobble.
Yes. Well, not to be too critical of you, but why WobbleGoblins when you could have been Wobbling Goblins?
We never thought of that. And
also, I don't know. I like the
WobbleGoblin. Yeah, it kind of.
No, I'm just teasing.
That was, dude. I like that though. That's a track name. Dude. That's a good idea.
Goblins are wobbling.
Goblins. Yeah, that's a good one. Awesome. So anyway.
But actually, kind of funny. Another question I had about names. Because you used to be Vendetta before you became SubMegatron.
Correct.
So just kind of curious, and I see artists do change names. What goes into a name change? What makes you say that you want to?
So the decision behind it is almost always that you're so much better than you were under that old moniker, at least you feel like, or you do a totally different style. So you don't like, I have a separate rap name than I do for my EDM, that's Woogie Main, if you wanted to know. But
and all description, all links are going to be down in the description for all this stuff. So everyone make sure to give them clicks, give them love.
So usually when artists change their name, it's because they want to, either the music they made was so bad in their eyes, they don't want it to be associated with them, or the new music they're making is so much better. Or sometimes it's a different project, but mostly it's the first two. And so for me, as Vendetta, I started getting noticed by a local label, a dubstep label, and I got a song released on their label, and me being some hotshot 20-year-old kid, I legit thought that I was like king of the world for having a release. Mm-hmm. And so I was partying way more than I should have been working. And there was a night that scared me and kind of made me look in the mirror. And so I took a long break, never thought that I was going to get back into it again. And then the first time that I went to a show, which was, it must have been 6 months ago now, I fell right back in love. And then I realized that this is really the only thing that makes me truly happy with myself, you know?
Mm-hmm. So. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, okay. Laghima, if you want to do you have a response to that as well? I know you've stuck with your name. Have you ever considered changing?
So I have already changed my name once, but it was very early on. So I started my DJ career just under my actual name, Micah Sweet, and decided that as much as I love my name, as much as I think it's a unique name, I really just wanted to have a certain persona about me, and that's where I took on the name Laghima. Who the history behind that actually is if you've ever watched like Avatar: The Last Airbender, or
love it, I'm gonna make my kids watch it.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so in The Legend of Korra, which is the sequel to Avatar, there is basically it's a villain who is studying an ancient airbending guru named Laghima, who he perfected the art of levitation.
Yeah, and that's something that, just to expand on that real quick, that's something that we try to do in a lot of our music, is have little hidden like Easter eggs. You know what I mean? Like if people know me, they know my lucky number is 22. There's a lot of knobs that are turned to 22% just because it's like, you know what I mean? Like it's just, it gives it a characteristic sound because we use it so often. It's like
it's the chili pea in your meth, yo.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
I love it.
So yeah, I guess that really answers that. So
yeah, fair enough. So you mentioned to me, so you kind of started up in a sub. You started up in Michigan area and then made your way down here towards Columbus area. Did you notice any differences regionally in the music scenes? And I'm sure you guys have both traveled around, so
not really. The thing that I noticed in Ohio, honestly, and I haven't been to that many shows, but it seems like they have not blew up yet the way Detroit has. So Detroit, that's where techno comes from. Techno music was born in Detroit, and they have what's the festival that they have in Detroit every year? They have like Techno Fest or something like that. But it's a really, at one point they had over 1 million attendees. It was a really big deal. And so there are a lot more like, I don't know, artists that really are trying to make it here. As opposed to in Detroit, it's more that there's just such an oversaturation. Nobody even takes it seriously because there's no chance for them because everybody's DJing. You don't have a chance to put yourself out there. But here it seems like people are bringing their A game because they see that there is opportunity, you know? Mm-hmm. So that's the difference. I think people are people everywhere that I've found.
You know? I've also noticed in Columbus, as much as I love the Detroit scene, it's a fantastic scene. It's a good time, but here in Columbus, it's a very it's a close-knit community.
You're right.
It's extremely tight.
Like
everyone knows each other in the Columbus scene.
I hear that a lot between creatives, a lot of, close-knit, and people respect other people chasing dreams. And we mentioned you used the word persona a bit back when you were talking about names, and that actually I think that's a perfect word to use, because although you being, of course, a real version of yourself, I think to a certain extent, you're almost putting on a characterized version of yourself, if you will.
And so I actually, that is why I make dubstep as opposed to any other kind of music. It embodies who I would like to be for that little while on stage, because nobody is, at least I don't think there's any such thing as you're this or you're that. It's what you put your mind towards, you'll start manifesting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's that's really important to me.
See, for me, it's like, I don't know, like outwardly, I feel like a lot of people, they see me and outwardly it's like, I know how that dude is. He puts his whole personality on his sleeve. But at the same time, you know, I've had a lot of personal traumas, things like that, that I have weird thoughts and shit. And so
that's good, man.
And dubstep is the way that I can express those weird thoughts, because it's all dark, weird noises.
Dubstep it's literally like, it's like the new version of punk rock, insofar as it's just a big 2 middle fingers to the system.
All right.
We're trying to disrupt the system with our music. That is our actual stated goal. We want the system to not be able to work as good as it did before we came on the scene. That's our goal.
You want to decentralize it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm a huge fan of decentralization in lots of things. I'm a big crypto bull, which we could do a whole nother thing, but I don't want to get too far away from the music, because that's obviously a very interesting topic. I had a couple other questions here, and we were kind of talking about passions and how, you know, you hit the scene after a long time and you just fell right back into it. And I think both of you kind of had a period where you got away from it and then you got back to it. Would that be an accurate? Yep. So then something that I think society has been wrestling with since since Nietzsche wrote the words "God is dead," we'd all been figuring out, okay, well then what are we supposed to be doing?
Yeah, right.
And a lot of people, you know, do struggle with that. And I don't want to say that meaning is chasing our passions, because that chasing our passions is a short term, you know, chasing pleasures. Right. But I think our passion is the vehicle to our meaning, if you will, where if we learn to understand and channel our passions, it can become a path towards meaning. And I guess, what do you guys' take on that idea?
So basically, like, everybody, I think, at some point or another has the thought as an adolescent, I want to change the world. And when I got into this scene, that is a big thing. And I want to change it in some big, profound, drastic way. But I realized that's not how it works. You change people one conversation at a time, or like everybody,
molecules colliding.
Yes. Yeah. And it's very important that you look at things like that, you know, and everything is cumulative. So there is no ever any one thing or other thing that you're going to be doing or not doing that's going to make or break you. It's every day do you wake up, and like you said something about mistakes. Well, there's another thing about our mistakes is we'll own up to them. You know, if he hears something and then the next day, like, he doesn't like it, he'll tell me like, hey man, this doesn't sound good. So
I've recorded episodes and then
he goes back and
what's that?
Start over. I cut you off and then I'll say.
Oh, you're good. All I was saying is, in 9 out of 10 times, he ends up going back and he's like, "Oh, you're right. That didn't sound good." So,
I've recorded episodes before, and then I listen back to them, and I'm like, "Oh wow, I did not do a good job." And then I've tried to reschedule and do it again because I wasn't happy with whatever. So I definitely, I mean, if you're not willing to admit mistakes, then you're not willing to learn from them, and if you're not willing to learn from them, you'll never get better.
Well, and again, what I wanted to say about the whole purpose thing is, like, I wanted to change the world. I realized, and once I realized that I'm actually changing the world by doing this music, like, I feel so much, like, I don't feel like I'm doing something wrong. I used to feel like I was, like, I don't know, wasting my time or this, that, or the other by pursuing my creative endeavors. But it's like, as long as you're happy and as long as you're not, you're treating it like a professional, you're treating it like something that you can actually make success. You're not just treating it as a hobby. You will become successful. I'm sure of that. So,
and I like the idea of the example of like a tidal wave. A tidal wave doesn't just rise up out of the ocean out of nowhere. It's waves back and forth, pushing back and forth against each other, building up and up until it is big enough. So, and a lot of people think it's just one big motion, but it's you got to bounce off of each other and build up. So
it's definitely, it doesn't happen all at once, and if it does, you got lucky.
Like, a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like another thing is something that separates us from I'd say maybe younger producers especially, is we write our music with a purpose. So the first song we ever made, I'll admit, we were just kind of throwing stuff together. We didn't really
literally threw a bunch of sounds together.
And it's an okay song, but we didn't play it last night, which shows you how good we really thought it was, But if you look at like our newer stuff, it's all tied together one piece, like the sounds will go together, and that's because we're trying to figure out how we did this so we can do it again. And I've worked with younger producers that they just click knobs until something sounds good, and it's like that'll recreate that one time, but you'll never know why you did that, how you did that, how to get back to it. So
kind of like the million monkeys at the million keyboards.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly like that. So yeah, it's really important that you take the time,
Just touching real quick on so what kind of, I guess I'll start off, Fruity Loops. You guys Fruity Loops?
We use Ableton.
He used
yeah.
I understand Ableton's better for playing like streaming music live. Am I correct?
Yeah, I'll just because I'm the Ableton guy. So
yeah, he's the technician.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So what Ableton has a few cons, but there's a lot of pros. So Ableton costs 3 or 4 times more than FL Studio does.
Okay.
And the reason for that is Ableton it's so streamlined. Like with FL Studio, you might have to open 4 different like columns before you can click on a feature you want. With Ableton, you can just search it. You can just search anything you want and it'll pop right up. You can search through all your samples to find it's really, really streamlined and user friendly. But that actually does lead to one con, which is that sometimes you'll click something you don't mean to click, because
constantly
every click has a purpose, so because they're trying to maximize utility.
Well, that's kind of interesting.
For every time I accidentally changed a line on Ableton. That's
interesting because I actually I think that's kind of a preference thing in terms of just like setup UI, because I actually hear what I was told the opposite, where the people who use Fruity Loops, they're like, oh, I like the interface, and
yeah, that it really to me it's like if you're a Nikes or Adidas guy, it's just kind of how you grew up, what you use first. Like I like PlayStation better just because that's what I grew up with. Xboxes are cool. It's just that's what's in your brain,
Yeah.
So that's what's happened. But
Apple versus Android,
but I can tell you,
thing.
And here's another way to look at it. So FL is for composers. Ableton's for producers. So FL is for somebody who wants to, because they have a really nice piano roll setup, and they have a setup to where you can really easily draw in a drum pattern and draw in a piano or whatever instrument pattern. And then you can loop that and you can edit that how you want, but for that one pattern. But it makes it a lot harder because it doesn't matter why. Ableton makes it a lot easier to handle actual producing, adding effects, changing the tempo and stuff like that. That's all Ableton. FL, it is better for composing simply because what I said before, you can't accidentally click as much. So
if I understand, FL is better for songs that might have a bit more repetition in them, for lack of better wording.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Lots of looping.
Yes.
Well, Ableton, it's unlikely that you're going to have the same segment pop up multiple times. Am I correct?
Well, it's not that it's unlikely. It's just that you don't have to it's a lot faster. Like there is no benefit to having it shorter in Ableton, which there is a benefit for that in FL.
So it definitely depends on the musical style as well.
Yeah, and it really, and there's might be stuff I don't know. I mean, 8 years might seem like a long time, but it's nowhere like the 25 that the program's been around.
Dr. Dre's been doing it for a second.
What's that?
I said Dr. Dre's been doing it for a hot second.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
yeah.
And people don't even realize when Dr. Dre came out with his album that was featuring Eminem in 2001, he'd already been producing for like 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he was producing for NWA.
No, yeah. Well, he was producing for them, and then before that, I mean, he has been interested in musical composition his whole life, and that's one of the things,
Not to go too far down that rabbit hole, I consider him one of the 3 godfathers of rap. It's in terms of both business.
Tell me the other 2. You have to tell me.
Jay-Z and Diddy.
You're not gonna throw Nas up there?
In terms of
technical ability.
No, I'm talking about influence in the way that.
I'm sorry. Okay.
When I say that,
well, although Nas was.
So from Dre, then Dre came Snoop and Pac and Eminem, and then from Eminem. So that's why I'm calling them like the top. Everyone came from,
Dude, I never thought about it.
That is true.
Yeah.
Well, and then to a certain extent, Jay-Z came from Diddy, but then what he did with Rockefeller, and then he got Kanye,
I see. So man.
And then in terms of just business, I mean, all 3 of those are business moguls, music and non-music. So I consider them the 3 godfathers.
You should. That's a segment right there. So
just curious, how do you guys feel about rhythm? I know it's niche.
we make. I mean,
we make some rhythms.
Yeah, it's like the thing about rhythm is it's only good on huge speakers because it's just rhythmic, wham, 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 and so. It doesn't even sound the same. Like if I played it on even his speakers in here, it would not sound nearly as good. So, and even car speakers don't do it justice because they're so close together.
So
that's interesting.
In my opinion, sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead.
In my opinion, so like I appreciate rhythm live, and I appreciate the sweat and work that goes into it. And we just made, I mean, it didn't really end up being a rhythm song, but it started as a rhythm song. And I don't know. I don't have as much fun making it because I like to get real in depth with my sounds and whatnot. Yeah, and rhythm is made with the thought of mixing another song with it in mind.
And that'll lead into the history of rhythm. So rhythm is basically what it sounds like a Jamaican person saying rhythm. It's the rhythm, man.
No, I hear that. Yeah,
that's where that term came from, because rhythm was originally remixes of old like Jamaican music.
Reggae
because reggae funk or reggae dub. You ever heard of that term before?
Reggae.
That's where dubstep came from. It's from reggae dub.
Yeah, and then that became like the hot dance tracks of the 95 to 05 was kind of reggae remixes. If you club mixes of reggae songs, those
then so somebody got the bright idea, hey, let's add bass to this. So
it never hurts.
Yeah, it never hurts.
It never does. He's right.
That's interesting. Sorry, hold on. I got my questions written down here.
Of course.
Okay. Outside of software, what kind of equipment do you guys rock outside of just your software?
Here, you go first.
So, I mean, as of right now, he's got a MIDI controller that he occasionally uses at home. But for the most part, we just do everything kind of digital, do everything on the laptop. Now, as far as mouse and keyboard. Now as far as DJing goes, I've got a big controller. It's called a DDJ 1000.
How much does it weigh?
What was that?
How much does it weigh?
I'd say about 8 pounds.
Yeah, okay. So it's not like an issue getting it to stages and stuff.
No. It's easy to transport. It's just
I was curious about like real heavy stuff. Do you have to get like vans and stuff to move?
No,
speakers.
Like
no, so that was so for usually it's just cheaper and better. Like honestly, like we kind of use the smaller shows now that we have a lot of production to kind of test out our tracks, because then we'll know what will sound the best on the bigger shows.
That makes sense.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of like what right now, like instead of buying $5,000 speakers, I can just test them on the club speakers. You know, it makes way more sense.
You're getting paid to do it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And then so what I have, you need to have They don't have to be super loud, but they have to be professional grade. They're called studio monitors. And it's a left speaker and a right speaker. And they're both perfectly balanced to where they have the exact same like frequencies coming out of each. There's no tonal distortions or nothing. Or headphones that are
headphones,
they have to be studio monitor quality. If they're not, you're going to be missing out on stuff. And I've had it happen to where I mixed it down in headphones, thought it was good, played it out live, and there was a frequency that I didn't even hear in the headphones. And it really messes it up. So it's important that you have good speakers and a good listening device.
And then I personally below the surface, you gotta make sure it's clean.
Yeah. And then also, I think that it's really important to have a second monitor, especially if you're just getting started, because you can have a tutorial open on one monitor and the program open on the other, and you can literally follow right along with it.
Absolutely. Not to go too far down on tangent, but I do. I also do some software writing as well. And
what code, if you don't mind me asking?
I do Java.
Okay.
Java. And actually, what we were talking about with the software, there's tons of different, they're called IDEs, integrated development environments, which, Fruity Loops, and those are examples of it. So it's like,
right. Isn't code blocks? I've heard of code blocks.
I use Eclipse for Java.
I've heard Eclipse.
It depends on the language, but there's a ton of different ones. And it just depends on what you,
I went my first year. My first year in school was for computer pro. That's what I thought I wanted to be. So I know a little bit.
I do it. I don't do it like a ton, but I do it on the side. It's something I enjoy. Not in a lot of amount, but anyway, not.
So it's important that you have two monitors, or at least you could even use your mobile phone to watch a tutorial. But you have something to where you're not moving back, forth. And then you have something good listening on. And literally, the only other thing I would recommend producers get, if they're going to buy something and if they're just starting out, is get Ozone. It's a mastering plugin. Do you know what mastering is? I'll just explain it to the audience.
Yeah, please do. Because
mastering is the process in which an audio file is basically, they do the final checks, make sure it's the loudest, make sure it sounds the best on all speaker systems. And so
like your QA test.
Yeah, and it's exact. I love how you have good references for this. Cool. Okay, I'm sorry.
So mastering is all about basically you are brightening the sounds that you want to be more predominant in the track, while dimming down the sounds that you want to be less predominant, and bringing the full color of the song out.
Yeah. What I was gonna say before I lost my train of thought was, it's important even if you don't. Because one of the big benefits to having somebody else master your work is they don't have a bias against it. Because you're always going to have a bias against your own music, no matter what. So it's like
that's what I was kind of saying with the type.
Yes. But another big reason, like, that you want to have that, even if you're going to send it out, is what it's going to sound. What you're doing translating in the master. Because I feel like a lot of younger producers or even older producers, they don't think about the limiter afterwards, because all sounds they start out like this, like the volume level. Let's say this is 0, this is -10, and they go like this, and they get squished together so that it can fit as much volume as possible into a given space.
Yeah.
And so it's just important that you think of the whole process as a whole. But other than that one plugin, there's really nothing else that I would recommend you need for starting out. You don't need. I have a bunch of software and even a few like hardware, like I have a hardware piano and stuff, but it's only because I like it, because like it was like a gift for me. It wasn't really even for the company, it's like it's for me.
Well, what you saying about two screens, I like to when I'm writing code, I like to just cast onto like the TV or something as my second screen. So something like that. But anyway, really interesting. So you say you guys basically have pretty much the same taste in music, right?
Very similar, a little different.
Yeah. And what I mean by that is we both like the same. Like, he's never showed me a bad song. Now, as far as taste, it's so unique that I have my own little like I like kind of more long, like blah, 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 and he likes more wobbly stuff. Come on, do the wobble.
I like the weird experimental shit for real. Like
experimental, yeah, that's a word I saw. I mean, I guess if you had to define experimental EDM like versus regular EDM, if you listen to an EDM song, can you tell right away whether it is experimental?
It depends on how much into that genre of music it is. So experimental simply means that it uses unconventional sounds than the original genre.
Sometimes
so
unconventional
structure.
But it could be unconventional. And like rhythm was considered experimental when it first came out. Rhythm was an experiment, and then it became huge. So the experimental, and honestly, that is kind of what me and him make, because it has some elements of rhythm where you can bang your head to it, but it also is very like melodic and very smooth. So we're trying to, because the successful EDM artists are guys that take what's popular right now and add a slight twist to it. You know what I mean? And right now, that's accidentally what we're hoping to do, which is cool. That's, we're not selling out. We just happen to be doing this,
Yeah. Well, I guess, to better word my question, like, is experimental an explicit genre? Like,
no.
Rhythm is explicitly a genre.
No, experimental is not
more of an idea.
Experimental is like, that's like saying everything that's black is white. You know what I mean? Like it's experimental, just everything that isn't fit in.
Is it experimental with a capital E or lowercase e?
I'd say capital.
Lowercase. Well, I'm saying capital E is like its own genre.
Oh, well,
so you would say lowercase
E. Honestly, I don't listen to that, so I'm not knowledgeable about that. Like I couldn't even speak on.
I'd say lowercase. It's
not necessarily an explicit genre.
Be experimental. Like
okay.
I've never heard of like a specific thing in experimental. You know what I mean?
Like no one sells themselves as like we make experimental music.
Right.
Like Queen is the best example.
Yeah,
here.
Queen
is experimental pop.
Yes, exactly.
But it's just like kind of an opinion subjective. It's not like an explicit genre.
Well, all music, all opinions on music are subjective. That's the crazy thing about the music industry is like.
But you have explicit genres, like you have your rap and when you hear a song, you're like, that's rap.
Two people are never going to agree on every song being X or Y, and that's the thing. Like it's all very subjective. Like there are edges, sure, but the edges are very blurry.
Okay, but I was just curious if that was like a specific genre inside EDM, or if that's just like general. It's just
honestly, in my opinion, it's what lazy producers do, because they're like, I don't want to get this song up to snuff. I'm just going to call it experimental.
Well, I don't think we need to. I definitely don't think we have to label things. I was saying, Spotify was coming up with some wild genres on their roundup.
Oh my god!
Hype, pop, smoke, trap, Death 7 or whatever. I love it. Apparently,
a genre.
It's like
I was wondering if experimental is just more of a mindset than like an actual style. Okay,
100%.
Yeah, and in that sense, we really are experimental artists. Insofar as every track, we are experimenting. We're trying, and the last song that we made is very similar to one of my favorite songs. I didn't even realize that until we were done with it, and I was like, oh wow, we just happened to capture this guy's vibe.
Cool. Question I asked all artists, musical artists, about the issue of sampling, because that can sometimes be a touchy subject. I mean, obviously you guys take samples, well, you use samples in your music. How do you go about either providing credit or transforming? How do you handle the use of someone else's work and integrating it into your own in a fair way?
So typically we will take.
Well, let me just clear out. I just want to get the law. The law states that if they can identify the song, the sample, then it's technically illegal if you don't have permission. But how often do they actually recognize the sample? And so that's why most samples will be edited in some way, shape, or form, so that just eliminates that possibility.
Well, fair use says that it has to be in some way transformative, but I think you could argue even if you take it sound for sound and plug it into a different context, it could hypothetically be transformative in a different context. What do you think of that?
That's kind of true, but the problem is the people who are like, their lawyers are better than our lawyers at this point, and when it comes to, you know, who's going to decide, it's going to be the person with money. So
yeah. But philosophically, how do you feel about that?
So philosophically, I try to take samples from sources that first of all I know will not have legal issues with me using their samples. Like, we've used sound bites from World of Warcraft for samples. We've used, you know, bits and pieces from we use bits and pieces from American Horror Story. Like,
that's really cool about EDM, where I think you sample from such, I mean, kind of like all over the place. I think that's what's really fun about it. Yeah,
that's one of my favorite things. I don't know about you, Micah, but I love sample hunting. That's what we call it, sample hunting. We just go out there and our ears are always on the lookout for the next damn or whatever.
Oh, yeah. No, I know exactly what you're saying. Very nice. So, yeah, it's kind of like whenever I'm driving around now, I look at every single house and piece of real estate as like a potential, you know, maybe I want to own this property or something. Right. 99.9% of them no, but
exactly. So like, right. And another thing, this is kind of a tangent, but it's kind of not.
Go on.
An important thing for producers, and something that's been very important for us, is understanding when to use samples and when to do sound design. Because, like, sure, I could make a drum fill and pick out all the individual drums and make the drum fill. Or I could just drag a sample over and do it. Why would I not drag the sample? A lot of drum samples I purchase, so you get royalty free. So like, actually all of them, not a lot, all of them. Every drum sample that I use, I bought, or they were free. So there's no royalty issues with that, because that is one area where, you know, but those sounds all sound so similar. That's another thing. It'd be hard in a court of law for them to prove like, hey, that's my kick.
I made that bass.
I made that bass kick. Yeah.
if I will, it's kind of, I don't know how into movies you guys into. It's kind of like sampling is like CGI, and doing the sound design is practical effects. Sometimes practical is worth it, but it's a lot of times a lot easier to just put CGI in.
Yeah, that's
you guys, I don't know how many movies you are.
Right. And because there are people that are professionals sound designers. That's what they do. They make sounds and then they put them in sample packs and stuff.
Oh, if you hit practical effects in a movie perfectly, they're great.
Right.
It's just so much easier and cheaper to use CGI.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so yeah, that is a great way to look at it, because there are, I mean, sampling is a whole industry, and there are like, there was like a Naruto themed sample pack I just saw that came out. There's a bunch of like Mario, fucking Kirby, and they're all these sample packs that you can get all these sounds and they're royalty free, so you can use them. And so as long as you, like Micah said, as long as you are, you know, being careful about where you're sampling from, and then we almost always change it. So, and that's another thing, is when I started out producing, I was so super against using samples. I wanted to make all the sounds myself.
It's a bit controversial at times.
Yeah, well, I saw this great meme, and this summed it up for me. So this guy says, I didn't like using drum samples, so I made my own drums. I didn't like that I used somebody else's drums, so then I went to my buddy, or I bought a drum rack and recorded the sounds. But then I didn't like that somebody else built the drums, so I went out and you know, it's like, how far do you go down it before you're going to accept somebody else to be part of your music? You know,
you can get a pretty good view of a T-bone by sticking your head up a cow's ass, but you rather just take the butcher's word for it. That's from Tommy Boy.
Wow, you have a way with words, my friend. I just want to let you know.
Thank you. Genre bending and then genre fusion. How do you go about maybe deciding that you want to fuse two genres together, or
so I have a perfect answer for this, actually. So that happens, that's a successful experimental track, basically, because there are so many genres, like it's almost impossible to make something sound good that isn't using some sort of something from another genre. And there's like over 100 genres of house music. You know what I mean? And that's house, and that's just simply doof, 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 and there's like over 100 different genres of just that drum pattern.
That's before you ask Spotify.
Right. Oh my goodness. Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
Yeah, and so
well,
good.
And as far as like genre fusion, we're actually so we're in the midst of getting started on a collab with a local metal. I guess he makes like skate punk.
Links, click them links, people.
Yep. His name is Following Reverie. He writes mostly skate punk, but he also writes some heavy metal stuff. We're gonna do a track with him that's gonna be like a lot of like metal licks mixed with heavy dubstep, like breakdowns, things like that.
It's gonna be basically like
I'm sorry, this is a stupid question. What's a breakdown?
So like in metal, a breakdown it's that part when it gets really heavy and it's just the one note chugging over and over again with a heavy drum pattern.
So I'll just explain all the parts of a song real quick of an EDM song. So you have your intro, which is just something that introduces the song. Then you have like your breakdown, which would be like if you had a really long intro, you might have a breakdown to transition it into the buildup, which is the part that goes do, 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 and then you have the drop. And then some people might do build up drop. Some people might do, intro build up. There's all, but those are the chunks.
Different textures.
Yeah. And those are the chunks that it has to be in. Like you have to have a build up, you have to have a drop, and you really have to have some sort of intro or it's not going to sound right.
So yeah, essentially, yeah. So in metal, a breakdown is kind of different from like in EDM. Because in metal, typically the breakdown is defined by that slow, chuggy part where it's the same note and the heavy drum patterns.
But the breakdown is literally just referring to it is taking the pattern and breaking it down. Mm-hmm. So it's like
it's typically the most rhythmic part of the song.
Right.
Okay. If I may, I think I can kind of put this. So you have a bass, and then your intro puts a little bit of stuff on top of it. But then once you go into the breakdown, it takes that stuff back to your foundation, and then you build back on top of the foundation from there.
I would never put it like that, but that's exactly what it is.
Okay, yeah. Cool.
Your brain is awesome, dude.
Yeah, and then another question in terms of putting songs together. So do you, and I'm going to give you kind of two options here and let me know where on the spectrum you are. Do you kind of have one solid idea and then you get all that idea in one song? Or do you have like a bunch of different like little pieces, segments here or there that you've worked on, and then sometimes you see, and this is what I call the Eminem style, where you have 1,001 lines on a piece of paper, and then you just kind of link them all together, or is it one full idea?
For every song we've done so far, we've just written the whole song as is, and we might come back. Like we typically will be working on 2 or 3 tracks at a time. So when we get bored with one, we'll go to the other. Mm-hmm. But something we're trying to get better at, because you can never stop learning, is we want to spend 1 day a week dedicated to just sound design. Like you're saying, like Kraken does. That's a really important thing to step your game up. And so that's basically something that we were not doing quite yet, but we are going to implement but either way,
a fusion of the two styles.
Yeah. And I have a recording app on my phone that anytime I think of a melody, I just record it into my phone, and then I can have a program that can transfer my voice to MIDI files, which MIDI just means like the electronic notes, like the notes on the keyboard in your digital audio workspace.
So very much Eminem style. You think and just boom, get it down right away.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice, very nice, very nice. Laghima, any difference in terms of how you think about it, or are you basically kind of same?
Because I learned from this guy, I pretty much do things the same way. So
okay. I didn't know if maybe that's interesting though. It's not one or the other. It's trying to develop both
two, for sure.
And kind of how you mentioned that you work on multiple songs at the same time. I was talking to an author, and he was telling me that writing books is very similar. Depending on what kind of author you are, if you're a more commercial deadline-based writer, then not, you have until him now to write the book, so you have to do it. but he is more of a writer on the side, if you will. So he says he just has like ideas and he just lets them build as they go. And then once the book is done, the book is done, but he'll have a couple ideas at the same time and just let them grow as they do naturally. You're very much, you don't set deadlines or anything like that. You let songs.
No. And we have loose deadlines for ourselves, but like for me, and this is kind of going to motivation a little bit too. Like one of the biggest benefits to working with him is that I am held accountable. I can't say, hey, I'm not going to work on music today because Mike is expecting me. And he can't do the same thing either because he know I will be mad.
Yeah. Like North Korean border guards.
What's that?
I said like North Korean border guards.
Yeah.
They literally stand facing each other.
Yep. But it's, yeah, like we both keep each other honest in that aspect. And it's really difficult to set deadlines that you're not and keep them for yourself. Like, and now that we're working together, like it's a lot. Like I don't want to let this guy down, you know. Like I don't want him to be upset with me because I look up to him and he's a great musician and friend.
But you don't want to force it either.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing is like, we just were kind of having a serious conversation, yesterday or 2 days ago. And I was like, and he was listing out all these requirements for our music. I'm like, no, there's one other thing you're forgetting. We got to have fun with it. If we're not having fun with it, we should pack our shit. Yeah. Do a different job, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If the passion's not there, then your vehicle to meaning is lost, as we kind of discussed a little bit earlier. Let me see. No, go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say that is one thing that I personally really enjoy about the scene that I'm in. I know a lot of other people do, is these artists are almost all by definition not sellouts because they're good enough. They could make a killing doing house music, do anything. If they just did music they didn't like, they would be making hundreds of times more money. But they do the niche music they love. And that's a big thing for us too, because we love that kind of music. We like going to that show that we did yesterday. My favorite part of it was watching the other artists, because these were guys that we know what they went through, and to come here and to share that with the world, like it's something special. It really is.
And I think it's very similar with, I'm going to be talking to a stand-up comedian tomorrow, and I think that world is very similar as well. Like they love watching the other sets just as much as they love performing them. So I love the parallels between creatives of different
it's funny you say that. So I listen to a lot of comedian podcasts, like Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura have one, but there's a bunch of them I listen to, and basically like that they say that all the time. Like you basically, here's the route for almost any creative entertainment endeavor. You start copying somebody else, and you start getting good at that, whether it's doing cover songs, whether it's doing hacky, impressions, whatever. And then you start to build up maybe a decent 15 minutes of your own material. And that's when you start getting booked for the small, kind of like where the stage we're at now. And then once you start building on that, once you have, maybe 45 minutes of your own music, then you'll start being like a middling act. And then once you have enough music to where you're playing all your originals, plus like new stuff that nobody's heard before, that's what makes you a headliner, because you have such a wealth of material. And that's the same thing for stand-up comedy, is very, very, very similar to that. You have the opener might do 15 minutes, 30 minutes, you know what I mean? But the headliner always does more. And that's just like that with DJing.
Yeah.
And also DJs are kind of going by the wayside too. Like if you don't produce, you're really not going to become, you can maybe make $500 a week, but that's not the kind of money people are trying, that's not the kind of money producers are trying to make.
All right. I want to shift topics a little bit, but first I want to thank you guys for continuing our trend of guests with beautiful tapestries behind them. Seems every single guest we've had has some kind of beautiful tapestry going on. So thank you. Now, like I said, shifting gears a little bit, to more of the business aspect of independent music. How do you go about marketing? I guess just like don't, as I say, don't give me your whole Krabby Patty secret.
Right. So the
gist of it.
The most important for us is word of mouth, and like going to like I individually thanked every person at our show individually, and I gave them all. You ever heard of candy bracelets? They're these,
Yeah. I mean,
so I gave them
self-explanatory.
each a candy bracelet to remember us by, and I think we're probably going to for sure do stickers. We're going to do bracelets probably with our name on it. And then we'll do a couple other cool ideas, maybe a few t-shirts that we'll just give away to people. But it's basically all IRL promotion, like
very human, very organic.
Yeah, because the internet, not like, let's say you do find a legitimate streaming company or something, you're not getting the people that are actually going to come to your show. That doesn't actually like, that's people in the UK, or you know what I mean? You might get 50,000 streams in Japan, but what's that?
That's for people who want money, not
right. And the thing about, like, you really have to spend a lot on marketing before you're going to see a full return, because it's such a competitive industry.
Mm-hmm.
And like with rap, it's especially noticeable, you know, how that plays out. But
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, at this point I've seen, like, I'll be listening to rap music, and well, first of all, YouTube, they'll put 1 or 2 skippable ads, and then once they know you're not paying attention, then they'll start dropping the big ones.
Yeah.
But I've seen, like, artists' whole songs are now advertisements, which, I mean, in my opinion, I think that belays a bit of lack of confidence in your music.
Yeah,
literally tricking people into listening to it.
Right.
But no, I've noticed a ton of it lately where artists' entire songs will just be advertisement.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, like you said, the saturation, especially in the hip hop.
Yeah, and
online. And
what's important is that, again, like we are making music that we really, really like, and so we promote it because we like it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it promotes itself. People see us up there. People are, I mean, last night, our first show ever, we got an email on the WobbleGoblins Facebook Messenger, somebody asking if we had stickers or merch or t-shirts for sale. And that was just our first show ever. So, you know, multiply that times 100. So that is where the real, money, because you get paid for shows in dubstep. That's where you make money. You make money doing shows. You don't really make money doing anything else. You like at the very highest levels, maybe you might make a few grand, but on Spotify, for every 1 million streams, you get paid $4,000. Just not that much for 1 million streams. Like, you know what I mean? So, but if you have 1 million streams, and then out of those 1 million, 1,000 of them become hardcore dedicated fans that are going to buy merch, you know, those streams are well worth it, because now you have 10 people that are going to spend $50 to $100 at your store.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what a lot of and that's what a lot of the merchandise and stuff is where a lot of these guys make their money now too. But what's really important for me, and for, like, I want us to just constantly be doing this and helping people and letting anybody decide whether this is for them or not, you know, like I did for this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think especially in the modern age, when we see the growth of stuff like Patreon and premium subscriptions, you know, you don't have to have the hugest fan base. You just need you need a dedicated, think about how dedicated your fans are versus how many you get. So in that instance, definitely you can focus more on the quality rather than the reach, which, you know, especially I like to bring it back to movies. You know, the studios like to take movies and make them more marketable, oftentimes destroying the artistic meaning behind them. And there's definitely that going on in music, you know, product placements and songs. But
I mean, that's one of the great things about dubstep, is it's so there is very little mainstream influence, because it's just there is no message that could be pushed, you know, it's just noises.
It's off the wall. It's
so
different.
So like industry people have tried to step in and like use industry money to get involved in this, but it never works out. They're like Circus Records was that way. I've heard, but I don't think they're really still putting music out, are they?
I don't think so.
You know what I mean? But there's if you're only working on the stuff that you love and you know, vice versa, then like I said, the promotion and the marketing and all that stuff it goes hand in hand naturally.
Yeah, and that's what I say too. I focus on content quality. To a certain extent, you have to have some level, like you mentioned, you guys have like a Facebook page or what, you
Right.
have you have to have some baseline of brand, whatever.
Yeah.
But
Right.
at the end of the day, and especially for me, and I think you guys agree, I mean, quality, content quality is king.
Yes. And that's why, like, we have literally spent an hour working on one sample, moving in, and that was like a quarter of the song. But it's so important that everything is absolutely perfect. And there's a million different ways that it can be perfect, but it has to be perfect to your ear. So, like, there is a pretty famous dubstep artist. His name is Dirt Monkey. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he was really big, and he kind of blew up from one, shows around Detroit because it's a really big scene for his kind of music, and two, he started putting up tutorials and stuff online to teach people how to make music. That's how he became so successful, is through tutorials and stuff. So it's like, really, you just gotta throw whatever at the wall and see what sticks. Like, next we're gonna try maybe getting some like content creators, not necessarily maybe even artists, but like people that might run like pages or something like that, or like dubstep pages. We're trying to get them to share our music as well. So
yeah, I was having a conversation with someone about kind of the business mindset, not to go too far off the rails here, but I was kind of trying to say to him where you have to want to try to see like 10,000 opportunities a day. 9,999 of those opportunities are not going to be worth going after or whatever. But if you only see 10 opportunities a day, you'll never find the one worth pursuing. So you just have to keep your eyes open. Kind of what I was saying, where every piece of property I look at now, it's 99.9% of the time, am I gonna buy that property? No. But and I start considering every single one I see. And it's like when you're testing the sounds, you're just keeping a subconscious inventory of, how pricing of buildings or whatever. I do the same thing when I go to the supermarket. I subconsciously keep a track of what everything costs. So that way when it goes down or whatever, I'll notice it, because they don't advertise the real sales. They only advertise when it goes up then back down.
And that's the thing, is like you have to just try everything, because you don't know what's going to work. Like, you don't know what the next big thing is. Like Instagram just became like leagues popular than all the other social media, and nobody really knows why, but it's important. Like, it's important that you can get on the ground floor of stuff like that. Or like the tutorials. There's not really anybody making very like super detailed tutorials about the whole process of making dubstep like we do. There's each section has there's people that explain how to make the drums, or there's people that explain how to make a riser or XYZ. But like, that's something we're thinking. I was doing tutorials, kind of explaining more of the whole process, and but like you said, it's just whatever opportunities that we can see for promoting our music, that's what we're taking at this point.
Yeah, very nice. Talking a little bit about shows and larger festivals. You guys were able to perform. Are you seeing venues kind of open up a lot more in the last couple of weeks and such?
Venues have definitely been opening up more. There's been a lot more going on. A lot of big artists are starting to book shows again, and people have been coming out more too. I've seen a lot more people going to shows in the past couple weeks. So.
Yeah, I have a really good feeling about this summer. I mean, a lot of people, if they might have been trepidatious before, like, now that there's all these safeguards in place and it feels like the government has done something to alleviate this, I think the people that might have been on the fence are definitely going to be like, okay, you know what, enough is enough. So it's definitely, like I'm noticing more people out and stuff, but it's not really going to start kicking off for another month. Around May, that's when dubstep's really in full swing.
I'm just hypothesizing right now, but with people being kind of locked up, for lack of better wording, and then kind of how you said with the Ohio scene on the rise, would you anticipate a very large bounce back Will you see very quickly it'll surpass where it was pre-lockdown? Would you anticipate that happening quickly?
I personally think it's going to be a huge bounce back because of the fact that people are tired of being locked in. There's also going to be people who got interested in the scene during lockdown, and you know, they're going to want to go experience their first show now because there's been so many artists doing live streams and things like that.
Yep.
And then on the other side of it, kind of, I like to give the example of Tupac or 50 Cent writing their albums in prison. Creatives being locked down just in there, and I'm sure you guys know, you've been kind of locked down in your creative bubble during this. You know, you've probably been pumping out some of the best stuff of your careers because so I think I said we're going to be seeing an artistic renaissance coming out of these lockdowns with so many creative people. You know, and not just music, you know, your writers, your painters, all that, wood burners, all that fantastic stuff. So, but talking festivals a little bit more, what are some festivals that you guys like to just attend as attendees?
So, for me, not to go too deep into personal issues or anything, but I've always been like kind of scared to go to a festival because it was so much. Like, I need to go home that night. You know what I mean? Like I will just want to party for 3 days straight. And I can't do that. Like, that's not healthy.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
So that's my thing. My first festival was with him. That was the first festival I ever went to. It was a very small festival held by some people in the Detroit scene. So.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Well, then maybe not festivals, but shows. Maybe shows. What are just some of the best, you know, venues?
There used to be this place, and it's semi famous or pseudo famous maybe. It's called the Works Bar and Grill in Detroit, and this was like a cartoon caricature of a seedy bar. Like, just you name it that you think seedy is going on, it's going on at that bar.
The bar from the SpongeBob movie.
Yeah, that's literally the bar. Yeah, except for there's happy like music playing, but
no bubble blowing.
Yeah.
No bubble blowing, that's for sure. No, I'm sure I've seen bubbles blowing at the Works.
Yeah. But what I mean is, like, it was a place where there was not really any rules or anybody had any shame of anything. You know what I mean? And sometimes I can get bad. What's that?
I said that sounds like music festivals.
Yeah, exactly.
People have no shame.
Right. So so like, I like the kind of smaller, more private venue, like the one we did last night. It was at the basement of a bar. I really like that intimate feel, because with the crowd, I mean, when there's only 10 people listening, you feel like you're really playing for those people. And so that's kind of a special feeling.
Well, you even said in your marketing how you like to make, you know, connect personally with people.
Yeah,
I get the feeling that you guys really like to see how your music can kind of move someone on an individual level. Definitely. So I could see how you know, if you were performing for maybe 10,000 people, you might kind of lose that in a way. Right. So I think that's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, like I am kind of glad that I went through all the, like, that I wasn't an overnight success, because it's given me a lot of grounding and stuff, and a lot of understanding that I'm just an entertainer. Like, it's not a big deal. It shouldn't be a big deal. Like, entertainers of any, we're crazy people most of the time. We shouldn't be valued like, you know, these super great intellectual beings, but yet we are. And so that's something I want people to understand. We're just making music, man. We like it. I'm glad you like it, but it's just music.
Mm-hmm. You know? Well, I think you might be underselling that a bit. I think artists and creatives have maybe if you want to argue, we're just
musicians. Maybe that's a better way to put it. No, the music itself is something,
but don't put the people on the pedestal.
Right. Like, we don't really consider, like, the music ain't coming from me. Is it coming from you? It ain't us. We're just the conduits. That's literally how I feel.
The second it comes off your fingers, it becomes its own entity.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's another interesting thing about art. Like, how much do you link, you know, especially you guys haven't been canceled yet. I'm sure you will at some point. But like when someone does something legitimately, you know, heinously wrong, you know, for example, maybe like a Harvey Weinstein or something, how does that taint something that they've been creatively involved with, or does it?
Well, that really, if you feel like you can't hold them in high esteem, you really can't do the opposite either, right? You can't say you can't say the music's bad because the person's bad, just like you can't say the person's good because the music's good. Neither, you know what I mean?
That's a very great point.
So, yeah.
Okay.
That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you feel about? Yeah.
My opinion on that is just if someone does something heinously bad, and this is going to be a very unpopular opinion, especially if it's a musician, just fucking steal their music. If you like their music, just fucking steal it. If they suck,
you heard it from him, guys.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I've seen there's yeah, not to get too much on a tangent again, but there's a YouTuber who covers like games mostly, and basically he'll be like, well, because like, so Nintendo, for example, you put up like a whole review of Mario Party, then Nintendo comes in, copyright strikes you, and they take all your advertisement money. So then they're like, well, then I think it's fair for me to, if they're going to take my content, we'll just pirate Nintendo games.
You know,
not that I am not legally advocating for piracy.
No, neither am I, of course. Of course.
Oh man.
But anyway, but I hear what you're saying too. Yeah. I mean, there has to be some level of accountability and karma to it.
Yeah, and again, like you're supposed, like people, you're the reason that artists are worth so much is you're the only you, and live, you're the only you that can exist in a live show. Music, like, dude, it's meant to be shared, but I want my music to be heard by as many people as possible. I don't care who steal my music, dude. Cool, thank you. Just get my name out there so when people will want to see me, because you can't create me, and that's what's really important. Is understanding, like Dirt Monkey. I talked about it earlier. He puts out all his music for free. He never charges a dime for any of his music, because he understands it's a waste of his time. He makes more money. He did 3 sold out back-to-back shows in like Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday by where I live. So it's like he's not making any. He's making probably 3 or 4 times the money doing shows than he would off of one stream. Off of one song. So
yeah, I think that's a really good point and extremely well said as well. So. You. I don't know. I want to kind of switch gears a little bit outside of music, but before we go, was curious if you guys had any other thoughts or things you want to put out there in terms of music production.
I just wanted to say, go for it. And if you don't like what you're doing now, change it up, but don't stop. I really think that maybe it's just because this is who I am. I feel like we're all artists inside. We all have some way to, whether it's writing, whether it's visual art, whether it's drawing, anything. There's so
doing the dishes. Someone's an artist at doing the dishes.
Right. And that's true. That's literally true. Or like I go out with my friend who used to be a waitress, and she stacks everything super neat. That is an art form. It really is. But just understanding, like, if you're not happy with the art you're making, make different art and keep doing it until you're happy, and make it for you. Make it for you.
Do what you
like. Yeah. Like, don't feel bad because you hype your own music up. You should like your own music that much. That's the way it should be. So
yes. Yes to all of that times 1,000.
And besides that, I do got two more things I wanted to plug real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
So something coming soon. We got called out in the West Michigan Dubwar by Blue Bear.
West Michigan Dubwar?
Yeah, so basically this is a it's not really a competition. It's not a prove you're better than anybody else thing. It's basically somebody makes part of a track, or what we call a dub plate. It's basically an intro, build up, and drop.
Okay.
And then they post it on SoundCloud, post it online, and then they call out 2 other artists. And so we were called out by Blue Bear, very good artist, love his music. So we have 1 week. Well, we were called out on Wednesday, I believe. So by Wednesday, we have to have a track put out, or part of a track put out to
that sounds really fun and interesting with artists.
It is. Yeah, it's fun. It's a good way, to sharpen your skills. It's a great way to meet new people. It's just, it's but that goes back to the opportunities thing. If we didn't look at that as an opportunity, we wouldn't, but every chance people get to see you live, because we're like, also like people are drawn, like we're lucky in that we're actually really good friends. So people are drawn to seeing us together, like, oh wow, those guys are having a good time. And that is as much a part of marketing as anything else.
The energy.
Yeah. Yep.
And other thing I wanted to plug was we do have an EP in the works. It's going to be called Salamanders and Magic. Don't have an official release date on it yet, but
don't rush it. Get it right.
Year. So just wanted to promote that a little bit.
Yeah. And what you guys are on? I know you're on SoundCloud. Are you on any other platforms at the moment?
We are both on so as WobbleGoblins, we don't have anything out on any platforms yet.
Yeah, because we're waiting until the EP is done and perfect, because we're kind of already have fans from both of us, you know what I mean? And we want to provide the small fan base we have now with something they can really remember and share with their friends, not just one song, but a whole 5 tracks they can listen to.
Okay. But individually, what platforms can people find you guys on?
We're on Spotify, Apple Music, everything.
Well, once again, guys, links in description. Click
just look up on our SubMegatron or Laghima and any whatever.
How's this for a branding win? If you Google DP2daBrain, it's literally the only thing that comes up on Google.
That's amazing.
That's how I came up with SubMegatron.
How's that for branding? All right. As I like to do with all my guests, I have a fun little list of interesting questions here, not music based, but if you guys would do me a favor and pick me a random number, 1 through 55.
Okay, like each of us.
Well, yeah, we'll do 2. So each. Okay. So 1 each.
I got mine.
I got mine too. So, 13.
Mine is 22.
Okay, actually, sorry. 13 has been done recently.
Okay. Let's do 34.
Okay, so 22 and 34.
You sick son of a bitch.
Oh, hey. Okay, so we'll start with 34 because this one's an interesting one. Medicare for all / healthcare in the United States.
Oh boy.
Yeah, go ahead. Burn it up, bro.
Go ahead, Mr. Left libertarian.
So I believe in Medicare for all. I think it should be a right. I believe it's worked very well in other countries, such as, Eastern European countries. And as much as it is a socialist program, we're not full on socialists for having a couple socialist programs. We're still driving capitalism hardcore. That's for sure. So I do strongly agree with it. I don't think, say I start making a little more money here down the road and I have to pay a little bit more in taxes so that, somebody that needs a kidney transplant or something can get it. That's not going to bother me. I'm not going to notice the difference out of my paycheck. So I don't think.
Well, and actually it's breaking it down. You actually end up saving money on the back end.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, the problem with healthcare, and it's different than any other industry. People treat healthcare like it's an industry. Healthcare is literally life or death. It's not. It hits different centers of your brain. It's not. How is water a utility, but healthcare not? You know what I mean? That's. And there's so many private interests why that, that's a whole separate podcast just talking about that. But I agree almost wholeheartedly with what he said. But I try to not pay attention to politics as much as I can because I'm very passionate.
Yeah.
I'll start to get mad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. I know exactly.
I want to make music, not yell at people on the internet.
Fair enough. I have maybe 2-3 points I'd put on that, and I'd start out by saying that I agree with basically most to all of what you said. I definitely would agree with you that healthcare and being able to live is a right. Like I said, the only 3 points that I might put on is the first thing I would put on the positive side of it is it also represents a huge bailout of small businesses as well, because we shackle businesses with healthcare, and it makes it almost impossible for small businesses to hire. So, larger companies, they can afford it. It makes it harder for small businesses. So that's one thing. The other thing I would point out that I think we miss a lot in the conversation in America is that healthcare is a lot more than financials, supplying it for. It's not just that we need someone to pay for our healthcare. We need to ask the question of why do Americans require 3 times as much healthcare as other countries?
Right.
And the example that now I listen to a podcast with a bunch of venture capitalists like Chamath Palihapitiya, if you're familiar with him.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, I was listening, and I can't for the life of me remember which. It was talking about the thing that happened to the world that I can't say, but he was breaking down the example of India. Now, when it comes to like diseases spreading, population density and infrastructure are 2 critical assets. So the assumption would be that the disease would have ravaged India, correct? That'd be a decent assumption to make. But because specifically COVID was respiratory, and one reason it didn't, spoiler alert, it actually did not spread very much in India at all, surprisingly. And because of the density and the infrastructure. And it's because, one, they don't smoke. The smoker, cigarette smoking per capita in India is basically non-existent.
Right.
Second, they eat, they don't eat red meat. They eat very healthfully. And, those are things, everyone talked about masks and, staying home and all, things that are important. But how many times did government officials use the words vitamin D?
And immune system, and I appreciate that you say that, because that is so missed, as it's like, we're not saying that the mask shouldn't be worn. We're just saying, what about these other effects that we could be working on, and there's no reason to, I'm not attacking you for wearing a mask. I'm glad you're wearing a mask, but let's do other things as well,
Sure, yeah, that really, especially because, at first we thought this was, going to be a new Black Plague with a mortality rate of like 10%. But then when we realize it's more about comorbidity factors, if there's one thing the U.S. is great in, it's comorbidity factors. And then plus added on to the stress and mental health strain of, stress and mental health strains are bad for physical health. And we live in a purposely, I believe, stressful society. They purposely try to stress people out so that, stress lowers IQ.
Not to control people when they're stressed too.
Not to go down to the UBI discussion. I'm a big fan of UBI. But people who are struggling financially are functionally 13 IQ points lower.
Yeah.
So if you're worried about money, you are 13 IQ points stupider. Right there.
So here's the problem, is that like smart people are always going to figure out a way to game the system.
Sure. And
smart people are, people want to make as much money as possible. So smart people have gained the system for them to make as much money as possible. That's all that's going on. Like all of the talk about like almost anything political, it has nothing to do with the real issue, which is that like these people, like how did they get, like most of the people that actually make the real decisions are not voted in. You know what I mean? Like they're advisors, and they're people that, have been doing this their whole life.
Bureaucrats and administrators.
Yeah. And that right there, like one of the reasons that socialism, like socialist healthcare worked so well in Sweden is because they all trusted their government and each other enough where they didn't keep track of who was using what. They just said, oh, you need help? Here you go. Here's your help. And they didn't have, nobody was trying to take advantage of the system because they all felt like they were part of the whole. And that's what America is missing. And with so many things, and it's because it's a big slice of economic pie. So it's like, we have an incentive for our slice. We don't have an incentive there is no whole pie anymore. And that's,
well, if I will, if I can, I might take that in. I might try to use that a little bit against you here and play devil's advocate.
Sure.
The argument against a single payer nationalized healthcare system is that in the end, what's going to happen is it's just going to result in a upward transfer of value through Medicare to the insurance companies. Medicare for all is basically they're going to inflate the prices, and since there's no competition, it'll just basically be a way for the insurance companies to make more money because it's now required through taxation. And like we were saying before, bureaucrats, especially in the United States, bureaucrats are incompetent at best and corrupt at worst. So special interests are going to be all just. What do you think about that?
I understand that, but the thing is, every system's going to get taken advantage. There's no system where humans can't game it.
Also, well, here's my take on this, and people are going to think I'm a communist for this one, but all you have to do is regulate the insurance companies so that they can't raise their prices like that, and
Yeah. So again, like the problem is that you're just going to have, like, if that's what you have now. Like, how is that system any worse than what's going on now?
No,
you know what I mean?
I wouldn't disagree.
So that's my argument is, like, you want the system that is the most easy for everyone to access. You want me and Micah to be able to start a health insurance company tomorrow. That's the most fair system. Then the guy with the best idea will win out. That's what always happens, So, but the problem is, like, what we have now is not anything we've seen before. I call it capitalism. It's not like because capitalism in itself, like at a small scale, isn't bad. It's just, hey, I have an apple, you have a pear, we trade, we both benefit.
I say it's natural.
But when you zoom that out to the level where you don't really see the numbers, you can't fathom the numbers. It's just it's a game. It's a video game at that point,
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't affect anything, and the farther you are removed from something, the easier.
And then you argue at that point then that human life takes infinite obvious value over these numbers that are just hypothetical at this point.
Right. Well, that's another point. The problem also is, like, it's, not to say that God is responsible for this, but we are certainly not responsible for who lives and dies. Like, there is no, and like, it's the argument of, like, so, like, are we wrong for giving them the medicine to save their life? Or are we, you know what I mean? Because that's interfering with their life, and that you know what I mean? Like, it can be it's very hard to, like, gauge what you're dealing with. I don't know. That wasn't a very good way to explain it.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I mean, I think I get the gist of what you're saying, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I always try to play a little bit of devil's advocate so that we get a little bit of resistance to ideas. I think there is a genuine concern about, government size and taxation. Those are not completely, like, ridiculous notions.
I mean, I have an actual theory for all this. It's never going to happen. But the best way to run this would be to where you have private insurance companies that are then regulated, like how we have how we have credit scores. Insurance, that would be the same thing for them. There's 3 independent credit score companies that have nothing to do with the government, that are all independent of each other. That's how you get your credit score. That should be the same for, like, insurance companies.
I don't know if that's the best example, because the credit score companies kind of suck.
Well, yeah, I'm just
but similar structure is what
similar structure to where there are as many inputs as possible for, like, what it is you're trying to accomplish.
So you would say you wouldn't want just a single, government Medicare is the only option. You would prefer
no. I think, I'm like a straight up libertarian on everything.
Okay, no, I'm just trying to make sure.
I always think that freedom of choice is always the best option. Like,
I agree.
The government should be one of many solutions. That's the way I look at it.
Well, some people believe they have to compete. Some people believe in completely abolishing private insurance altogether. You're not in that boat.
No, and also, like, I'm not coming from a super educated place as well. I'm coming from just like me thinking about this in my own head. Like, I'm sure that there is
ideas here.
Yeah. But like, I'm sure that there is so much knowledge that I need before I can make an informed decision. That's the thing. Like, if I don't have the knowledge, I always go with freedom of choice. So
I think that's a pretty good default to go on. All right, so I have one more question for you two inquisitive gentlemen, and I think we're going to start with Laghima here, because I think we're going to have some different answers on this one than we did on the last one. What responsibility does a government have to protect people from themselves, from harming themselves? And that's very purposely broadly worded.
So I see both ends of the spectrum here. I'm a little bit of a left-leaning libertarian, so it's like I kind of think that, you know, people's responsibility, people should be responsible for themselves, and if they can't be responsible for themselves, it should fall on the people who love them, the people who are directly around them.
Right. No,
but
hold on. Let him get the butt.
Not everybody has a family. Not everybody has people to take care of them.
Yep.
In that case, I think there should be programs in order where it's like, okay, like this person's mentally ill. We need to keep them in check, but we need to stop treating them like they're criminals. Stop throwing them in padded cells with other people who like to rip their hair out and eat their own skin. Like it's just
okay. Maybe I'll contextualize this a little bit more specifically. Maybe like in forms of regulation, and I'll give the example. Like, obviously, sugar is bad. Everyone knows sugar is bad.
Yeah.
You know, is the government within its rights to tell Coca-Cola that you can only put X amount of sugar in your drink because it would be bad for people? Does the government have the right to tell Coca-Cola how much sugar they can put in their drink?
No, I personally don't think so, because if people want to buy that drink, now I do strongly agree with like my vape juice here. This product contains nicotine.
Now,
I strongly agree with warning labels like that, but I don't think it should be regulated to a point where our government shouldn't necessarily be allowed to tell us, hey, you can't put that in your body, or you can't do that.
So how do you feel about them bumping up the age from 18 to 21?
I don't support it, because we've got people in the military who are 18 years old. They can literally go fight and die for their country, but they can't hit a vape. Like, it's a little bit ridiculous to me.
I would definitely agree with you on that one, and I would say the same thing for the drinking age as well. Let's maybe go down the spectrum a little bit farther to things that are more inherently harmful. Let's say black tar heroin. Should someone be allowed to buy black tar heroin at Walmart?
So there are countries that have law or systems in place that allow for basically safe injection sites, things like that for drug addicts. And what we found that causes is, first of all, it makes most of the drug addicts want to get clean, because they're like, okay, I'm going in this place to do this every day. It's not like, what is my life? What that makes you think about your life, and it makes people seek out rehab. And because of these safe injection sites, these people also have the resources to find out about where they need to go to rehab. Rehab is much more affordable in other countries, things like that. And in turn, no drugs are necessarily fully outlawed in these countries.
Sure, but in a lot of instances, you know, going to these rehabs are, you know, it's not an option. You know, if you get taken in, you know, on like an overdose or something like that, it might not be. They will send you to rehab whether you want to or not. And would you think that's right, that they should be sent there, even if they say, "Hey, I love heroin. I want to keep doing heroin"?
And this is just how I am. I'm very
That's what I'm looking for.
I'm very cut and dry about things. I'm very straightforward about things. I think if you want to keep doing heroin until you die, then shit, keep doing heroin until you die. But like,
does the government have any responsibility to that person?
Not necessarily. I don't think so.
Yeah, and
okay. Yeah,
so
take it over to Sub.
I feel similar to him, but a lot stronger. So maybe it's because I don't have as much sympathy because it's something I've personally struggled with. Like, the availability of something does not make you more likely to use it. There are plenty of people that don't smoke cigarettes now. Cigarettes are fun. Why wouldn't you at 21 start smoking? Because you know it's bad for you. Like, and there's a lot of so social education, like the rate of millennials that smoke cigarettes is almost nil. That wasn't by government regulation. That was by that truth.org campaign that they did.
Well, to be fair, a lot of them have moved on to vapes, which are
that's true. That's also true. But at the same time,
but I know what you're talking about with truth.org.
Yeah, and it takes like it takes grassroots movement from people that actually want the change, not the government.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so like okay, like black tar heroin, if it was legal, no reputable, if it's legal, Walmart's not selling it. First of all, no reputable company.
I don't know about that.
Well, okay, maybe they would, but there are going to be there are lots of research chemicals that are legal that you can't buy in Walmart. That's actually a good example. Or there's like, do you remember that spice stuff, that K2? You couldn't buy that at Walmart. It was fake THC, like synthetic THC.
Okay.
So that was really popular like 5-6 years ago. You could only get it at head shops that were already seedy. That's again, like, people still care about the reputation. That's why people don't do drugs. That's why people don't do, and that's just one example of self-harm. And we could take another example where it's somebody that's super insane and they just constantly want to be violent towards themselves. Well, I argue that if that's their prerogative, like, we have no responsibility to help them because there's so many resources that the resources going towards that person could go towards somebody that their life is actually going to improve. Like, if we know for sure, if they've shown no want to improve their life and nobody else wants them to, and nobody's motivated to try to help them, like, as long as they're not harming somebody else, you have to let actions run its course.
Yeah, I think that adds on to my answer. And that is basically, if they want to get better, then I think we should try to be helping them get better. Right. But if they have no want to get better, then why is that anyone's responsibility but theirs?
Freedom of choice. Their freedom of choice. And speaking on that, I went to probably the best rehab program that there is, and it's because it's voluntary insofar as you get to choose from one of like 5 different locations. So you don't have to go to any one of them. It's kind of like voucher, like the voucher schools they have.
Yeah, because I enjoy playing a little devil's advocate here and digging a little bit into the more opaque ideas where, we're saying, I think we all agree to a certain extent that the government is not, shouldn't be stepping into personal people's lives and telling them what not to do and all that stuff. But what Laghima was kind of talking about with, like, programs and that kind of stuff, just to kind of stir the chili a little bit. What about the fact that, all these programs and such, they cost tax dollars, and those tax dollars have to come from somewhere. So to a certain extent, economically, the people will be funding these hypothetical, I don't know. What is your take on the resource aspect of it? The fact that any of these programs you talk about will take resources.
I have a perfect, so like, charity is still by far the number one way that resources get transferred.
Okay.
Like, and that is all by will, by choice. People generally donate about 10% of their earnings to charity. That's just general across the board.
Okay.
And so what we should do is figure out how to incentivize them to put it in, causes they think are worthy. Like, that's a much better system. And it should be like the government basically
tax credit, if you would.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, the government steps in to help them, but it doesn't step in to protect them necessarily. Like if they fuck up, they don't get any special government protection, but the government's there to, oh, hey, if you need help with this paperwork or whatever, they would be there to help facilitate things like that.
They should make it, but they shouldn't be making anything mandatory.
No, yeah, that's
unless someone is starting to affect someone else. Once you start affecting someone else, that's where
and that's and once you
until it hits my face.
Right. And if you don't know about the libertarian philosophy, it's for those of you listening, it's based on the idea that you cannot initiate force against someone else or their property. So that's what everything I believe is based on. So if you use that principle and apply it to that, well, if that person does heroin and doesn't do, he can, like, if he's not harming other people, what's the problem? There's people that watch TV 4, 5, 6 hours a day. I know it seems crazy because it's heroin and it's been stigmatized, but in reality, there are a lot of people that recreationally use drugs that are professionals that you would never think are. And so all you're doing is funding a black market, by trying to illegalize substances that are harmful. And you can eat arsenic or not arsenic. Think of a poison. You can buy poison over the counter and drink it. It's
rat poison or whatever.
Yeah. So people do accidentally swallow that and fucking die.
Oh,
so it's like you can't. Fucking Ron White said it best. You can't fix stupid.
I'm a heavy Darwinist, so I believe in fucking survival of the fittest. If you do something stupid and get yourself killed, I'm sorry, you weren't fit to survive.
Fair enough. I think something we would all agree on would be that we don't like the government picking winners and losers, if you will.
Right.
Libertarians. So when they say black tar heroin, not okay, saturated in trans fat,
right,
sodium, okay.
Exactly.
Who's to say, who's to,
where's the line drawn?
Exactly.
And that's the point. We don't want there to be lines, and we definitely don't want the government to be the one with the pen.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that we all agree on.
Right, and the thing is, like,
we have to let society draw the lines.
Right. For me, I personally disagree with abortion. I don't personally like it, but I'm never gonna tell a woman that she's wrong for doing that. It's just a personal preference, and you have to understand that that's what most of these things are. Most of these things are personal preferences. They're not even things that should be
the government.
It's not a right or wrong. We all want to think that we're right and they're wrong, but it's just, and abortion. Okay. Not to get too touched, because I know it's a kind of touchy subject, but
very touchy subject.
The way that we've been so polarized, people on one side say, "How dare you take away a woman's choice? You're evil," and then the other side says, "How dare you kill a baby? You're evil." And I think what both sides need to do is they need to be able to see, oh, they think I believe in killing babies. Oh, they think I believe in taking away choice. Understand the other side's argument. And be like, no, it's not about, at the end of the day, you're never gonna crack that egg. It's always gonna be
exactly.
But we need to stop villainizing people, even if it is something. I could see, if you I don't know, you have to at least be open to other people having a reasonable, to just say, oh, they're wrong because they're taking away choice. No, they think you're killing a baby.
Right.
And I can't get into the science of that too much, but as of right, I don't think there's really a scientific way to prove what is life, and that's a whole nother one of our wonderful questions.
And that's the thing. It's all opinion. Yeah, it's all subjective. Like, you can't, and that's why, we're just
cancel
too
culture is so dangerous, because we're just like, this is right, this is wrong. If you say the wrong side of it, you're no longer welcome in society.
And the idea of having the United States originally was so that people could move to the state that fit them best. We're supposed to have 50 different kind of states with different kind of laws. And if you want to be a Quaker, everybody knows that Pennsylvania was a Quaker state, but there's all these different examples, and that's a beautiful system of government. The problem is centralization is always going to happen.
Yep.
But
then I got to bring it back to Medicare for all is one big centralization. So,
well,
once again, we're on the same page, but another counter argument to see that Medicare could. I'm just hypothetically, is there like a state-based
the
version?
problem with that, I have a good answer.
We have a state-based version where there's 50 different state-based healthcares, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is one option, but the difference, like I said, healthcare it's called a natural monopoly because there's such a huge barrier of entry to open a hospital.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you can't just, wake up tomorrow and start a hospital. Mm-hmm. So it really is, they have a natural monopoly on this service. So
just like airlines,
just like water. Like if there wasn't laws like that for the water utility, our water would be $1,000 a month right now. Mm-hmm. It's people are going to take advantage of the situation. That's where the government's supposed to step in, and only when people are being taken advantage of, the government should step in and say, no, you're not doing that. Yep. That's it. That's the only thing the government should do, and protect us from foreign threats
and protect us from unknowingly eating poison and shit. But
there has to be a baseline of So I mean, there has to be a baseline, but it has to be safe. But beyond that, they shouldn't be dictating, well, it can't be putting too much sugar in this. It's gonna, even if we know society would be better if society would probably be better if they couldn't put a ton of sugar in it. But would it? Because we'd be less free. And I think freedom's a little more important than, because no one is forcing you to eat that candy bar. So they can put all the sugar in the world into it, go buy some broccoli. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's free market capitalism, baby. I want to wrap up. This has been absolutely brilliant, gangbusters. Two intellectual minds. We got into the creative process, we got into the music world, and we got into the deep thoughts. Any thoughts you guys would like to leave with the listeners?
I just wanted to again reiterate, make art. Oh, and also, I promise you, whatever you're worried about is not as important as you think it is. That's the only two things I want to go out and say. It's
also, do what makes you happy, have fun, follow your dreams, because I spent so long not following my dreams.
Like these are cliches, but they are really true. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't start living until I stopped trying to live for someone else, and once I realized, like, I'm a goofball dubstep artist, like that's fine, nothing wrong with that.
Gotta be you.
Yeah, I'm me. Yep.
All right, well, thanks again for the time, guys. Once again, all the links down in the description. Everyone give them a click, give them love, give them listens. We're planning on doing a live show lead up to the release of this podcast, so make sure that you're paying attention to the social media of the WobbleGoblins, as well as DP2daBrain. We'll be posting a lot about upcoming stuff, but once again, thanks for being on the show, guys.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Make sure you keep on listening to DP2daBrain, and we're out.